Did you know that Google personalizes many searches by city and Also Asked is the only tool to access live People Also Asked data at city level? Try for free at alsoasked.com.
I was going to say that SEO with Fat Joe is as peaceful as this, but then the birds are all having fights.
Tired of SEO guesswork? Quadra's AI agent goes deeper to uncover high-impact optimizations and completes hours of SEO in minutes. Get started now.
Thank you, Becky. Good afternoon, everybody. Why is this talk in the future of search section? I think that's because since I got involved in SEO, we've always worried about change. I think maybe the last 8 years less so. But before then, you'd come to Brighton SEO and it was different every year. So I'm excited to be talking in this session. And I want to share a bit of my past and how that's impacted, I think, or will impact the future. I've had a lot of failures and quite a few successes. And I want to talk through those today. A bit of a background, though, about me. I got into SEO in 1999. As Becky said, I think my haircut gives away that I'm older than I look. But thanks, Becky, all the same. But when I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking, actually, I've pitched to a lot of different companies. So I reckoned over the time, I started in-house. Well, actually, I started accidentally in SEO, if I'm honest, but in-house. I reckon I've pitched or won about 400 different clients over the last 25 years. And clearly my pitch to win ratio isn't 100%. And then I realised, I've pitched to actually probably 800 different clients overall. And there's no way there were 800 different strategies. And some of the clients who won or didn't win, some of the strategies went better than others. And it got me thinking, were there any core principles within those sort of 400 odd clients who won, the ones that went well for the long run, that we can learn from for the future? So I got very 2025 and I had 450 odd sort of proposals, pitch decks, schedules of work, onboarding sort of questionnaires, and the results and what came out of that, and analysed it in AI, asked it lots of questions to say what are the key core strategies that link these and how many are there? And there were 4. Which is where I came up with the idea for the talk. Is like, what are the 4 strategies we need? And I think, hopefully this is helpful to go through this. I think currently, and honestly, it was like this back in the early days of SEO, you were nervous of getting left behind. Okay, you'd come to Brighton every year, there was so much to learn, you'd slightly freak out that you couldn't learn it all. And back in the day, one person could do it all, but that isn't the case now. And the slight fear is you can come away from a conference like this with so much information, but not know what to do with it. So hopefully these strategies will help you do that. One thing I do want to make a note of, one thing I did notice was when I looked at the strategies we'd had, where we'd had clients that maybe we'd only had for 1 to 2 years, and we'd done good SEO, but they hadn't remained as a client, we'd possibly been a bit of a zombie. And by that, I mean we'd done a sort of off-the-shelf SEO approach, which is quite easy to do because you do a pitch, you're busy, you're on board, and off you go. So one thing I just quickly want to mention, when you're thinking about your clients now, or if you're in-house, your boss or your product or service, just make sure you're not doing turnkey. I think with AI coming, that is going to be a key factor, is not doing that tick box SEO approach. What we're trying to do is and I encourage everyone else to do, we're trying to build an agency that grows over time. And to do that, you need to keep clients for 5, 10, 15 years. So when I've looked at the clients we've kept for that long, these are the patterns I've found. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you. Because you've got to remember, clients and users and search engines all want us to do better, don't they? Clients want us to better understand the pressure they're under, especially at the moment, but also their objectives and goals. Users want us fundamentally to deliver helpful products or services or information or answer questions. The search engines want us to help them, don't they? They want us to structure content that helps. So when I was looking through the strategies, I tried to pick out a few things I thought would be helpful to mention. And this is one thing that almost goes before your strategy. One thing when I looked at the strategies that were successful for the long term versus the ones that weren't, and this is by looking at the sort of onboarding we did, the one thing I'd say to you, which is worth taking away from this session if you only remember one thing, is that your sort of SEO strategy will never exceed the quality of the questions you ask. And sometimes people are scared to ask tough questions because they don't know what the client might say, especially when you're asking about the industry or the bigger picture. But when we hadn't done that, they were when the clients didn't last very long, or we're always trying to sort of prove the value of SEO. So please just say that again. Do remember your SEO strategy will never perform better than or sort of exceed the quality of the questions you ask. It doesn't really matter how senior or junior you are, or how how cool or how good the product you've got is. If you don't do that, you will hit roadblocks in the end. So yeah, just a quick, when I got into SEO originally, I didn't really have a plan, if I'm honest. I don't know if anyone else has done this. And I just optimised for every keyword I could find. And this is where I learned the lesson of it's important of the questions you ask. And I worked for a training and events company, and I hadn't been on a quad bike many times. I've been on a quad bike about 4 times, but it was the most interesting thing on the website. So I optimised for every keyword around quad biking I could think of, including professional quad biker. Now, unfortunately, at the same time as we got to number 1 for that, a chap called Ozzy Osbourne, who's the lead singer of Black Sabbath, who was famous for being himself in 2003 rather than Sharon Osbourne's husband, he crashed his quad bike, broke his neck and quite a few other bones, and people thought he was going to die. So what did the press do? Well, they obviously Googled professional quad biker. And who did they want? Well, they wanted someone who obviously knew a quad bike better than their family, who'd obviously performed at the highest level. But who did they get? Well, they got me, unfortunately for them. And what ended up, after a 2.5-minute briefing from my boss, because everyone in the company was out apart from me, on the sort of news at 10, ITV News, introduced as a professional quad biker talking about how to quad bike. Now, it was a comedy moment. The staff loved it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious. My boss was less pleased because it wasn't about anything they didn't. Theoretically, did it help with SEO? We didn't even get a link of anything for it. We got a lot of frustrated calls from the sort of enduro quad bike industry who had highlighted that I was a fake. But fundamentally, I learned quite quickly the importance of asking the correct questions. And actually, I didn't lose my job over that, but about 6 months later, the company went through a bit of a rough time, and my boss sat me down and was asking what was I actually doing. I didn't really have a plan. So I quickly learned the importance of asking the correct questions. And that's why, although that's a bit of a light-hearted sort of message, I do think we can get a bit lost in the weeds, especially if we're perhaps less experienced. We just focus on the task we've got to do rather than look out and up at what else everyone's got to do and what the point of the company is, where they're trying to go. And once I did that, the company then grew. But it did almost cost me my job. Okay, so it goes back to that. I think as SEOs, what I hadn't realised is the impact of what I do. I think often we just look at our job as a task, as a challenge. But fundamentally, if we've got a client, we're massively responsible for their success. Or if you're in-house, you're massively responsible for the success of the company you work for. And please, A, don't undervalue what you do, because I think some people do, and they get a bit imposter syndrome-y. But B, if you're an agency, you have to make sure you care and you provide value. And if you don't, you won't build these clients for the long run. In fact, if you've got clients that only ever seem to last 2 years, it probably means you haven't got a proper strategy for them. So I'm going to run through a bit like there's only ever going to be 4 Teletubbies. I think there's only 4 strategies you need to know to get to sort of be future-proof as AI and other things impact how we evolve. Just a quick point that I noticed, again, with clients we won but didn't deliver long-term value. So we did deliver good SEO, but they didn't stay with us for more than about 2.5 years. And it was that strategy is not just a list of tactics, okay? So just think about, if you're an in-house team or an agency, are you a tactic-led team or agency, or are you a strategically led team or agency? If you're tactic-led, that probably means your clients do have a shelf life, or you're running out of things to do. If you're strategic, you've got a much long-term relationship. And the clients we've worked with for over 10 years, we have got the strategic level approach. Clients we've lost, when I look back at it, arguably it was tactic-led, okay? So please remember that a clear business goal sort of shapes the strategy. The strategy then shapes the tactics. And then together, that's what delivers the real value, okay? It's not just a list, as it says, it's not just a list of tasks or next steps. Those are tactics, okay? So don't start with tactics. Allow time for strategy. Now, the first, I've got 4 core strategies. The first one is what I call the lead, the sort of lean, cost-effective, I guess, SEO. And that was one of the buckets a lot of our clients went into. That, when I say cost-effective, I mean sort of £2,000 to £4,000 a month. And the thing that struck me on this was how often the ones that hadn't lasted for more than 2 or 3 years, we had just done that turnkey SEO approach. So we had done good SEO, but we hadn't spent enough time speaking to the client and winning them over and explaining. And I think it's the whole classic sort of tortoise versus hare approach. I think if we're honest, smaller clients can be the harder ones to manage, or can take as a percentage of what they pay you a lot more of the account management time up. And that, if that's happening to you, that means you haven't properly communicated a strategy. You know the client you have where you're almost firefighting all the time to explain to them what are you doing and why you're doing it. Or if your clients are and you're like that, it probably means because there isn't a strategy in place. So you need to get a strategy. And weirdly, what surprises me, I think, the smaller the budget, almost the better the strategy needs to be. But we often approach it as, well, if it's a small budget, we'll just do X bits of content, X off-page links, and then, Y time on tech SEO. But what I found, looking at the our clients that we'd worked with for years, is it was crucial to get buy-in for the client, sort of with the client, to make sure they understood SEO. So even to do training, so they understood the importance rather than just seeing it as something they need to do, but also to do it for the long term. So we have like a 2-year plan with them, which evolves. It's hard to do if it's an owner managed company or they have got a small client. But when we didn't do it, they are clients that we've only ever kept for a couple of years, and they just seem to go to another tactic-led agency just to try different tactics, and they keep moving about. So I would encourage you to, if you've got a smaller client you're thinking of, they're just always ringing up, and they sort of wear their heart on their sleeve, and they're always chasing it, because there's not a strategy. You need to stop and start again. And it's hard to turn clients down, but if you can't get them to a strategy, you just need to know you'll lose them over time. And that's the other thing, you've got to explain it's going to take time. We must have all had those calls where they're like, I want to rank number 1 tomorrow. If the client doesn't understand that, they're the ones we've lost. And finally, and besides asking the best question, if you've got small clients, this was really important that I noticed, the clients we've kept, and I'm talking about 10 to 12 years now, so Vaughton started in 2010, so clients we've had almost 15 years, in the smaller budget, the ones that have stayed are the ones that we've constantly evolved their website. Now, we don't do web design and dev, we've got coders in-house that can do it for tech SEO, but we don't do that. But working with agencies is every quarter we've evolved their website religiously, not giving in. We haven't actually, weirdly looking at it, done loads of off-page, we've done some digital PR, but actually we just constantly changed their website every quarter without fail almost. So you had a 2-year plan of where you wanted the website to go, and you're just constantly doing it. And they're clients that are in relatively competitive keywords, but it's a really cost-effective way. So please don't undervalue. If you're not doing that, think about it and work with your team to come up with a plan. And actually, just a couple of case studies. One was a timber merchant. When we did that, literally all we've done is evolve their website over the last 4 or 5 years. We haven't really done much outreach at all, but it's been like, how do we evolve the content, the linking architecture, the design, usability, the accessibility. That's kept them at the head. I think Google's, understanding how it crawls it, what they're about. And the other one was a publishing client where they had over 200,000 pages, and we literally spent a few years just reducing it to 100,000 pages, and their traffic's gone through the roof as we've evolved. We haven't got distracted by just doing tasks, okay? It's not just about tasks. It's about being open and upfront with the client and making sure they buy in. The second one is the differentiation strategy. This is probably the most fun, and I reckon underutilised strategy that we put our bucket of clients into. And it's not, I know differentiation in marketing terms is like trying to find an unmet need or create a distinctive brand. From an SEO perspective, it's about focusing, rather than, when you get a new client, you get the sort of personas of the client's clients, if you know what I mean. It's trying to get the personas of the target content creators. So that might be industry news, national news, bloggers, social media influencers, whatever. And what we found was, when we did that and we focused purely on that, and this only works if the client understands the point of SEO. If they don't, it doesn't work. And their budget's probably between £4,000 and £10,000 or something like that a month. We have real success that really pays for itself and is loads of fun. And I think to do it though, you need to really understand your target content audience, okay, and almost spend time finding them, researching out them, meeting them. If you do that, it is a bit like a silver bullet, it is like gold, because if you can get content that engages with them, they do the work for you. But it's often not at all linked, weirdly, to the target clients. It will do from an SEO perspective, but not from a sales perspective. But obviously if the rankings go up, that helps with the sales. Secondly, the other thing I noticed is when we had been agile, so we were ready in advance to respond to news. So obviously AI can help with that nowadays, but trends, but just knowing the industry and working with your client, having a strategy, you can almost have, a bit like the BBC, they have got obituaries already written for most famous people in the world in case they die. You can do that with SEO. And 1 in 3 of the things you create, you'll never use, but if you get them, they're like gold dust. And the third one we found with this, and I don't know why more people don't do this, if you're trying to target influencers or people who write content, bloggers, whatever, they're all people and they use the internet. Use Google Ads, paid social to target them and try to understand what engages with them. Create a sign up for a white paper or some content or something they might want. Because people will have a big budget for like a sort of a vanity marketing campaign, and they just, on a hunch really, and maybe just an ideation session, go full throttle. But actually, if you spend 10% of that budget on a paid campaign to see what engages, then the 90% that left, what you've learned, then do it, the results can be amazing. So do that. And case study quickly of that was a company that was one of the UK's largest sort of bag manufacturers, didn't really have a brand, not the most exciting products. So we had a two-phased approach, but they understood the point of SEO. So we did, to get awareness initially in their industry press, we did some world records, which got a shot in the arm as well for the links. And then we did a long-term, created unique, bespoke products, which we knew would engage with the writers and the bloggers and the industry out there that would then link back to their website because they were sold on their website. And one was this selfie bag, which was like an organic cotton bag that had everything you needed for a selfie, including advice. We did a bag that was made completely out of paper for festivals, that if you left behind it, rotted down within 2 months, and it had everything in it from dissolvable soap pads and everything and toilet roll. And it just worked for us. So and that's really fun if you can do something like that. So if you've got a client that gets SEO, remember your target audience might not be that audience of your clients, it's the content audience you're going through. The third one is niche. Now it's almost this like B2B led SEO. These are people where it's high value, low volume. So you can look like a genius 1 minute and look like an absolute numpty the next because you haven't driven any leads. But if you recognise you've got these clients, and a lot of people I think don't like to work in this sector because it is quite specialist, focus on this. If you've got a client that's really focused, doesn't change their products a lot, has a clear plan for the next 5-10 years, this would be classed as niche. If you've got a client that loves a crazy idea, don't bother because you won't be able to do that. But this is about building value over time, okay? So what we've got here is you've got to properly understand the client. So when we've identified clients that are like this, we've literally spent time knowing we bought their product, we've gone to their offices, even worked from their offices to hear the chat, meet their clients. Almost someone in your office or 1 or 2 people need to know as much about the product as the people in the office. And it's amazing how much more powerful the ideas you have are. Also create sort of evergreen campaigns, what I've called campaigns that build. Again, this helps you build. If you're an agency, this sort of stuff helps you build clients for 5 to 10 years. And if you want to grow as an agency or you're in-house and you want to develop your career, these are things you need to do. You need to have a long-term plan. So campaigns that build, it's like often research-based. So if you can run a survey every 5 or every 6 months, or every year, the ones we've been doing that now with the 4 or 5 years, you can then do reports based on loads of historic original content on data you've got that builds itself over time, okay? And think about your team. Try and make sure it's something they're interested in because it slightly breaks them if it's a software client and they don't like software. But that really helps if we've got a sailing client, we've got some of the team that love sailing, works brilliantly, okay? An example of that, or a couple of examples. One was a warehouse management company. So again, we went down there, spoke to their clients, understood how it worked, and that really helped with the ideas. But they now know we know loads. And actually where their marketing team has changed, we've worked with them for 4 or 5 years, we know more than the new marketing team. So we're sort of a partner rather than a supplier. And that's where you want to get to if you can. The other was an agricultural business. We're fortunate to have an office in the Woodlands, sort of a solar powered thing. So we could get products down there and we could all test and play with them, and that really helped with our client understanding what you want to do. The last one is the growth SEO strategy. This arguably isn't an SEO strategy. This is more strategic-led conversations. But we've definitely lost clients out to this. If you've ever lost a client who you think has outgrown you, or the new marketing director's come in and they've changed to an agency they prefer, it's probably because you didn't realise you need a growth strategy, okay? And what this is sort of engaging at a higher level, okay? Almost the tactics don't matter. I'm not being funny. You want to align with their business goals, build a resource that they know you can build with them, okay? And then you want to measure, report and adapt, but you're working at a strategic level, okay? When we've lost clients is when we haven't identified that. Someone else has come in above us, sold a dream to the client, and they've gone, even though we've been doing good tactically SEO. So if you've got a client you know wants to build, you have to get in front of the directors, okay? An example of that, where we've lost a client was because we just didn't speak to the board. Someone else came in a consultancy, sold a dream. Weirdly, we now do the work for the consultancy, but it's not as good for us as a business. So if you've got clients that want to grow, you have to speak to their board and sell the long-term dream. Just so if you could just stop and think, maybe run through your clients or your internal client, which bucket you go in, and hopefully that will help shape the tactics you deliver once you've understood the long-term plan for your client. I completely agree with Becky. SEO is fun again. I think people are fearing it, but don't. If you're good at SEO and you have a strategy, you will be fine for the long run, but you need that strategy. You don't just want tactics, okay? But anyway, if anyone's got any questions, that was a quick run through. Do DM me, and I hope you have fun for the next couple of years in SEO. Thank you.